NBNN. We are here live with Tracy Hickman, New York Times best-selling author, lead story developer for Shroud of the Avatar, and author of Blade of the Avatar. Welcome, Tracy, and thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it's great being with you today. Thank you for having us here.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. As the folks out there asked us if we would have you after we had some of the developers, Richard and Starr and the likes, on with us, and of course, a tweet or two is all it took, and you replied back with, "Who do I have to slay in order to come on and do this?" So let's just get started right off the bat. How did you get involved with all this with Shroud of the Avatar? How did you get involved with writing the prequel novels for Shroud of the Avatar, for starters?
Well, it's actually an unusual story. Richard and I have been friends for a very long time. Back when he was working on the Ultimate series, and I was still a designer at what was then TSR Incorporated and making Dungeons and Dragons games. It was then that we met actually in the conventions, and he was a big fan of my games, and I was a big fan of his games. I played Ultima back in the day, and through all of the Ultimas back in the day.
Yeah, who didn't?
So we just really connected and really clicked. And we'd always said that if there was just something we could work on together, if there was something that we could both put our creative talents to it, it'd be really great. And we just never quite found the time or the fit. You know, I'd be off working on something of my own, or he'd be off working on something his, and the timing just was never quite right. But it was just a few years ago when I just one day I thought, man, I haven't talked to Richard in a long time. I need to find out what he's up to. And so I gave him a ring, called up on the phone, and he called me right back. And I, you know, he said, "So what are you up to?" And I said, "Well, you know, I'm working on some of these book projects, and it's kind of nice." And I said, "What are you up to?" And he said, "Oh, I'm going into space." Yeah, it's just hard to top that.
Yeah, no kidding.
The one up on that just doesn't exist. So I said, "Wow, you're going into space?" Yeah. And he says, and in fact, years ago, I had pitched an idea to him about a way to a thing called party flicks, which was a way to film a movie as a party. You'd invite all of your friends over, and you'd film this movie, and then at the end of the party, you just show the whole thing because it was all filmed in sequence. And he said, "I was thinking about that just the other day." He said, "Is there any way we could do that while I'm in space?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And so I concocted this space epic film that the Apogee of Fear, which he took with him up on station, and was able to, with the rather wonderful cooperation of the astronauts on the station and a cosmonaut on the station, he was able to film the first science fiction movie ever made actually in space.
Remarkable.
Explaining all of that, of course, is actually longer than the movie, but
yeah, right. Okay. Now, is that available out there for us to look at someplace? There, YouTube
yeah, actually,
video?
I think you can actually see it on YouTube now.
I'll have to take a look at that.
It turned out to actually be a historic document. The Smithsonian wanted a copy of it when it was all done.
Yeah, why does that not surprise me?
But when after Richard had come back, and we worked on this together and enjoyed working with each other on this, I said, "Well, what else are you up to?" And found out that he was, as our conversation went on down through the years, found out that he was building this wonderful Shroud of the Avatar and going to be doing crowdfunding on it. So I said, "Well, what can I do to help you? What can I do to support you on this?" And I said, "Can I do a video or something that you can put up on the Kickstarter, and you know, how can I help?" And eventually that kind of I made videos, and the videos went up on the website to support the Kickstarter, and that kind of evolved into, well, I said we could do a Kickstarter goal if you wanted to, um, where we would, if you reached a specific big goal, then I could write, Richard and I could do a novel
Right,
for
right.
Shroud of the Avatar, and that, um, is got, I guess it got Richard thinking, and Star thinking, and Dallas thinking
And the
down.
creative juices started to flow.
It started to flow, and next thing I knew, I was announced as lead story designer for Shroud of the Avatar.
Well, now I was going to ask about that. Now, that is a title they have for you on the website. So now, are you as the lead story designer? What does that entail working with Richard and the guys there? I mean, aside from, of course, supplying the base storyline.
Well, it's largely has to do with the base storyline, but it's not just the base storyline for Forsaken Virtues. It has to be much more expansive than that. Richard and I have had continuous discussions, not just about this incarnation of the game, but about future expansions to the game, all the way through the culmination of this epic arc. And so, for me, it's been a tremendous journey. Not just a journey in story, and this enormous epic story that Richard and I have been creating, but it's also been a really fabulous journey, for me, to get to know Richard better, to know how he works, and to learn from him the wonderful craft that he's developed down through the years of creating MMORPGs and digital incarnations of fantasy. So it hasn't been just an issue of the journey of the story itself, that we're seeing in Forsaken Virtues, but it's also the journey of the greater story that we've been talking about together, and also, to a certain extent, this personal journey that the both of us have been able to have together, and not just the two of us, but all of the really creative people that are working here at Portalarium to bring this to pass.
Gotcha.
I've had opportunities to visit with them, with the creative staff down there, and just impressed with the fabulous imagination and skill that they're applying to the game.
Now, you and Richard collaborated on writing this together. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what was that experience like? I mean, is it more difficult to write when collaborating with somebody, or when you've already had the world's backstory, like in Shroud of the Avatar?
Well, with Shroud of the Avatar, I have to say I've collaborated throughout much of my creative career. My first books were done with Margaret Weiss, and were done in collaboration with Margaret.
Read many of them.
And my wife and I collaborate on books now, and Laura's actually always been a partner with me in our creative efforts. I mean, the very first adventure games that we did together. Rahasia and Pharaoh and Ravenloft, I guess, is probably the more famous of them.
Ravenloft, forgot all about that.
But all of those were done with I did in conjunction with my wife, and were done in partnership. So I really like working in partnership. There's a creativity that can happen between people, when both of us are on the same page, and both of us are trying to find something that's cooler than the other person had, and contribute something to this thing that's being built mutually between us.
Now, does it make it easier? Does it make it a little smoother doing that, working, collaborating with somebody else, or especially somebody like back in the day, Margaret, or with your wife, Laura?
Well, I think it actually depends on the creative. I mean, I know that there are some people, some creative people that I know who just can't do that. They're very auteur, and they want it their way or the highway, and that works for them.
Okay.
Um, it's just simply a different way of doing it, and it's kind of the way that I prefer to do it. Um, I find it invigorating to work with other people. I find it inspiring to work with other people. And so, while I have written on my own and I have done books on my own, and ultimately, I guess when you're writing, it does come down to one person at one keyboard. Um, uh, Even so, there's a freshness in collaboration when two people work on something that neither one of them alone, I think, can achieve. It's not easier. I think in some ways it is certainly harder. Um, but if it's the way you prefer to work, I think it's in that sense, I guess it's easier
Okay.
than just sitting down and making stuff up.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about your writing process? Are you a plotter? Are you more of an organic writer? Are you, you know, just let it go wherever it roams? How does the process work in Tracy Hickman's mind?
Well, I am. It's an interesting jumble of terms, actually, that you've used, at least in my head. Um, uh, Organic writers think I am more of a plotter, and plot people think I'm more organic. And
Everybody's a critic.
because everybody's a critic, everybody has their own way of doing it. I prefer to. Well, William Goldman, and it was, as an aside here, Richard and I have had long talks, not just about the story for Shroud of the Avatar, but about story itself, and how there are different approaches to story in terms of narrative story as opposed to story in game, and that there are different requirements for those, just as different mediums have different requirements, just as television is different than the written word, and just as stage is different than television. So we've had long talks about story. I'm a big believer in what William Goldman said. William Goldman said that story is structure, that there is an underlying structure in story that needs to be there for the story to be supported and solid. I also personally believe, that story is meaning, that that we come to understand through Joseph Campbell's work and also through dramatica theory, that that story is really the way people think. It's the way we find meaning in the randomness that is around us. And where there is no story, we will make one up. That's human nature. When you're driving down the street and obeying most of the traffic laws, and somebody cuts you off in traffic, all of a sudden, all of a sudden you become the hero of your story, and you are the one who's righteously trying to get somewhere, while this other person is the ne'er-do-well who is oblivious to the laws of the land and is obviously doing this personally to you in order to cut you off. If you look at it, of course, from the outside, it's actually probably better described in terms of chaos and thermodynamics than anybody's ill intent. But for us to find meaning in a meaningless event, we have to create a story around it, and imbue a meaningless event with meaning. So story is at the heart of the way we think. Sometimes it's used against us in the case of propaganda, for example, which is why you have to be aware of story. But more often than not, story is a means of communicating meaning much quicker than through facts and figures. So I look at the story of the structure of story, and I like to understand, open the hood and look at the workings of the engine of story when I write. But at the same time, as I always tell new writers, and as Richard and I have often discussed, When you have an outline for a story, the next thing you have to do is kind of let go of it. And in fact, I tell students that the way you should hang on to an outline is the same way you hold on to a handful of marbles.
Okay.
If you hang on too tightly to the outline and start forcing characters to do unnatural things and say things because of plot and you're plotting and go places because you tell them that they must, you squeeze the outline too hard and you lose all your marbles. On the other hand, I think that if you just let go and open up your hand and let the characters go wherever they want to and say whatever they seem to feel in the moment, and what structuralists might think of as exploratory writing.
Okay.
Well, you open up your hand, and then the characters wander off, and you lose all structure in the story, and you lose all your marbles again.
And it goes in, yeah.
So the best way for me, at least in my mind, to approach story is to give it form, to give it a structure into which characters and events fall naturally and react naturally within the structure of the form. I think that story is structure. I think that that Goldman is correct, but I also think that discovery writers inherently know that the stories that they create in their discovery writing naturally find that form. So I think it's a matter of coming to that form from either one side or the other, either starting with the form and then working your way toward an organic story structure and characters, or starting organically and trying to feel your way and find your way into a structure of character and story. And it's just different approaches to reach that middle.
Gotcha.
I guess I am more on the structural side in terms of story composition, but I strive to move away from that and toward a more organic structure.
All right. Little did I know such a quick question was going to be just so much to explain there.
Oh, well, I am sorry about that.
No, not at all.
Story is very important to me.
Absolutely. I'm getting comments over here, and if you see me looking from side to side, I've got commentary coming in chat rooms over here, and everybody's just loving listening to you explain that. Now,
thank you.
Of course, all of that.
That's 30 years of craft.
Yeah, but all of that gets us these engrossing stories that, I mean, I've read you since I'm a much younger man, and there was just nothing like, of course, to this day, having that book and getting engrossed in the world that you create, whether you're leading us down the trail and leaving a story open-ended for a sequel, or whether you wrap it all up in one kit and caboodle right here, right now. But I always found myself to the point where I was so engrossed that, I mean, literally, I would go 1, 2, 3 days and book's done, and I'm like, wow, what a ride. And that was always what kept me coming back. Now, I haven't had a chance to read a whole lot of Blade of the Avatar. 2 reasons. One, it's in digital form, and my e-reader isn't cooperating these days as well as I'd like it to. And we both know about the technology difficulties we have with some of these. Now, Blade of the Avatar was released to backers in sections, and it was completed. And you've done something similar in your Dragon's Bard subscription. How different is writing knowing that the readers will be experiencing it before it's complete? And is there anything that suffers for this, such as editing or revision times?
Well, editing and revision times do suffer from this, but at the same time, I mean, to a certain extent, we're moving into a new age with all of this. I think all of us recognize that we are all playing Shroud of the Avatar right now online.
Absolutely.
But it's not finished yet. I mean, it's not actually done. And it isn't the point where it's the point where we can play in it and we can play with it. and the elements are starting to come online. But in terms of saying that Shroud of the Avatar is finished, that's just not the case. And so,
Exactly.
what a wonderful thing that we get to come into it now and uh, affect its growth and affect its perfection. Um, and so, as we live in this digital age, we've kind of gotten used to the idea that we can come into something that is in process, and and understanding that it is in process, then we can go ahead and participate in growing it and perfecting it
Absolutely.
as
Yeah.
normally. In the old days, of course, you'd want to play test everything to death, and everything had to be right, because when you shipped it in that box and it was on that disc, man, it better work,
Well, we're
because
doing something
you had no
unprecedented
choice.
here because this has never been done in such a way. Like
Yeah.
you're saying, I mean, you used to have the whole storyline wrapped up in a ball and ready to ship on shipping day, and there was no ifs, ands, or buts. The story had to be complete. Everything had to jive with each other. Now, I know my partner Jack Frost has asked. He spoke with you and Richard a while back, and there was talk of some more chapters coming for Blade of the Avatar. Um, are we going to see those soon, or are you finished with them? Do you have any status update? How?
No, actually, we've done some additional chapters for Blade of the Avatar, and it's actually, it was part of the deal that was made with the publisher. They wanted additional materials for their publication, and so we did, I think, 4 or 5 additional chapters for the published edition, for the print edition that's going to be coming out. Um, what's a, a, a what's really exciting for me is that we need to be moving into book 2 now.
Cool.
Richard and I need to get together and outline book 2, and that's on the docket here in the next few months, I think. Um, um, I'm especially excited because it allows us to explore areas of the world and the background of the world more fully. Especially especially the second book, I think. Usually second books are a little on the weak side. I like a good, strong second book, and
Absolutely, absolutely.
so this book actually is going to take us to some pretty amazing places. And I love the idea that within the game, that these places that we are visiting essentially in the past
Yes,
are places that you will visit in the present. That as Richard and I were talking about this, I very much, and throughout the development of this, both of us really love the idea of players encountering ruins in the wilderness, and if they've read the books, that they know what those ruins are and what happened
absolutely.
there,
Yes.
and suddenly we have a depth of history
So,
and experience in the game that is beyond the metagame.
is it difficult writing a past history for people who are living in the future history as it's playing out? Is that a difficult scenario for you, or does that not matter? Um,
My life has a lot of my creative life has been built around building worlds and histories, and
Absolutely.
so to be able to take the elements of Shroud of the Avatar and look at excuse me, look at the history that Shroud of the Avatar represents, and see how everything flows from the past through the story that we're writing in the novels and all the way up into the game. To see that continuity is really part of what I do, and part of my creative life. Excuse me.
Not a problem. I know.
So no, it's actually it's built into everything that Richard and I talk about over time. An understanding of that perspective in history, and that, yeah, magic has to come from someplace. power has to come from someplace. Richard's games traditionally have been very human-centric,
To say the least.
to say the least. But now, because of the past that we have been able to establish, we now have a logical reason for diversity
Okay.
in the world, and I think that the world's become enriched by that, especially especially from the standpoint of our responsibility um, for our actions in the past to how that's affected the future. All of which carries over into not just Shroud of the Avatar, but also Ascendant as well, since a lot of the fundamental background is shared.
Right. Now, of course, I've seen the news out there, and you've joined on with the Other Side Entertainment Group to write a prequel for Underworld Ascendant as well. Um,
Yes.
uh, which ties into the Shroud of the Avatar. And now, how did all that fall together? Um, my own personal vision when I saw Shroud, and I'm seeing all this, and my mind is blown, and I'm going, Richard's about to do it again. He's about to blow gaming history doors wide open. Well, most people just don't get it yet. There are those of us who have that vision, and we see what it is, and then all of a sudden, Underworld Ascendant makes an appearance in all this, and of course, you sign on with that. How does this all fit uh, within each other? I mean,
Well, I think that I love the idea of sharing background. I love the idea of sharing story and expanding the story in new directions. Um, the folks with Ascendant contacted me when they went into Kickstarter and said, "Well, you know, we saw this worked really well with Shroud of the Avatar, and we're wondering, you know, what would it take to convince you to do this?" With the understanding that Richard and Portalarian were in full agreement with this, and were perfectly happy to cooperate with that.
absolutely. They actually were pushing the Kickstarter within Shroud of the Avatar. There's a couple
Yeah,
tie-in
absolutely,
items as well.
yeah, and I love that. That's another thing for me is I've really loved working with everybody at Portalarium because it's all about the game. It's all about the story in the game, and and everything that they've done over there has, as we like to say in publishing, it's on the page. It's all in the game. You know, I know this may sound a little funny, but I visited their offices. I've seen the servers that the game runs on,
Oh, we've seen you down
and
there several times. Yeah.
and I love going down and visiting there, especially because the offices are they are not the most expensive offices that you're
Oh,
ever going to see.
we're well aware out
They
here.
are they are in fact, you know, there are roof and walls that, you know,
It's like a
so that
clubhouse,
so
you
that
know. They packed everybody
it,
in and as tight as possible, and
it really
everybody's
is.
cozy. Um, but
And but all the money, all the effort, everything is on the screen. It's all put online, and you see it when you play the game. It's one of the things I appreciate about them. That I think ties. I think that that's all part and parcel of the generosity that they have there, and the whole mentality of generosity, of being generous with the fans. And as you can see, I think with Underground
amen.
Ascendant, that it's a generosity that they have with the world to be able to share it and allow it to expand and grow. It's just a wonderful environment in which to work.
Now, I touched on the fact that this has never been done in such a way before. With your involvement here, um, how do you? What vibe do you get from this yourself of being on the cutting edge of helping build this with Richard and the guys, and just knowing that the love that you see from the fans and the fan base out there, um, does that give you a little extra incentive to make it just that much better, and give back in essence.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, I'm inspired. I'm inspired by Richard. I'm inspired by Star and all of the wonderful people that are down at Port Larian. I'm also inspired by the fans who, um, uh, I think, give us that energy back that we need to make this right. To a great extent, we do it for the fans. We do it for the players out there on the other side of the
Of
screen,
course.
to create something that we can all be proud of. I mean, you asked me earlier what it's like to have to write a serial. Well, it's a high wire act, because you you're writing a chapter at a time, and it better work with the previous chapters, or somebody's going to tell you about it, and we do hear about it when they don't.
Now I know, real quick on that, that there have been some chats I've seen out there on the internet where people are asking you about the history, and you've even solicited some feedback from people on how they would do, and how's that been working? Getting the feedback to help guide that from the fan base here in Shroud and the Avatar.
Well, actually, it's just an extension of my enjoyment of working in collaboration. The only difference is that instead of collaborating with Richard, I'm collaborating with thousands of people online, and listening to what they're saying, and trying to find find a direction and all of that. I mean, ultimately, of course, you can't listen to every voice, and nor should you.
True, true.
Um, but when there's a good idea, yeah, take it and run with it, and build something better with it. And it doesn't matter where that idea comes from, so long as it serves the story. My wife and I started writing together a few years back, and we'd started writing together, and then we did many other things for decades, and then suddenly discovered that the kids could make their own sandwiches, wash their own clothes, and they were moving out. So
Had plenty
we
of
started
time on
writing
your
together
hands.
again. Yeah, had plenty. Well, certainly, and we had time to do it together. So I said, so we established a rule when we started, and the very first rule is that the story comes first, egos come second. The integrity of the story, and the story that we're trying to tell, and the characters that we're trying to portray, that was the most important thing. It didn't matter whose idea was what, or where anything came from, as long as the story was solid and the characters were solid.
Now, I can guess that you're both very passionate about your writing and how you tell the tales there. Does that cause a little friction every once in a while that you have to set that rule to keep the story first? Just,
After raising four children, writing together actually isn't too hard. Um, and both of us focus so much on creating something fabulous, the best work that we can do, the best story that we can tell, that we actually don't have a lot of friction in that. But again, I think that comes back to the whole thing that both of us here have been working in collaboration most of our professional life.
Now,
Um, and that's why it translates so well with Richard.
now I know that after looking up some research and stuff, that you and Laura both now travel together, go to shows together.
Mhm.
There is no we want Tracy or we want Laura. You guys are now a package deal, where one goes, the other goes on tour. How is that? Now the kids are grown up and gone, and now you and Laura have time to spend a little bit more time going to these events and functions and stuff. What is that like?
Oh, we love doing that. First of all, we love meeting people, and we love doing new things and going new places. It wasn't a couple of years back, actually, we were invited to Singapore,
Really?
and um, they wanted us to come down to the Singapore Writers Festival down there, and I said, well, we both have to come. And they said, well, okay, but we can only fly one of you first class. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, fly us both coach class to Singapore, and then give us a couple of extra days. Pay for a couple of extra days in the hotel and cover our expenses for a couple of days. And so, we went to Singapore and had a wonderful time down there. I'd spent a year and a half down in Indonesia back in the mid '70s, and so for me it was great going back to that area of the world. And it was great for Laura to go and experience Singapore, which is a fabulous town. Not too long ago, both of us got in our car and drove down to Long Beach, and we're in the con man shoot down there. And as we were driving down there, we both said to each other, we don't know what we're doing here, and we don't know what they want us to do when we get there. But whatever happens, it's going to be an adventure.
That was a
We
question
like
had.
we like doing adventures together.
It was one of the questions was you recently got involved in the Con Man series. How did that come about? What role are you playing with that? What can you tell us about that?
Well,
Since you brought it up there.
That was I think it was on Facebook that I saw someone had posted the initial Indiegogo video
All right.
for Con Man. Watched this video, found out what Nathan Fillion and Alan Tudyk were doing, and immediately pushed the send the money button. Just
Take my money. Take my money.
take my money. In fact, I immediately then also sat down and wrote a blog article that was "Con Man, take my money," and so I just loved the whole concept and what they were doing and how they were doing it, especially since I've been going to conventions for over 30 years. And so, it was like they made a series for me. And anyway, I thought, wow, wouldn't it be neat if I could, if I can help these guys out anyway, I'd love to do it. And the only person I knew that was actually associated with the production and in any way was Felicia Day. And Felicia and I had gotten to meet each other on the convention circuit and gotten to know each other. And I think Felicia Day is one of my favorite people in the world. She's a fabulous individual. So I wrote to her and I said, listen, if you know anybody over there in the production that I get in touch with, I'd love to help out. And so she said, well, sure. Gave me a contact over there with the executive producer over there, PJ Harsma. And one thing just led to another. And he said, well, you need to be in the show. So they said, if you're going to be in Long Beach on this date, come on down and be in the show. So I said, well, Laura and I will come down. So Laura and I got in our car. We drove down to Long Beach, and we had absolutely no idea what they wanted us to do. We thought maybe we'd be spear carriers, the those out of focus extras that are kind of standing in the back someplace.
Right, okay.
And so we show up for the shoot at 7:30 that morning, and PJ comes running out the doors and grabs me and he says, I've got you a line. You need to get into rehearsal immediately. And off we went.
Hi, Tracy. Well, welcome to the set. Yeah.
Welcome to the set. And yeah, they took me in, and then next thing I knew, I was in ward, and they said, okay, here's your line. I delivered my line. Okay, fine. And Alan Tudyk's on stage, and I delivered the line. He delivers it back, and okay, fine. And then they take me into costuming, and they put me in something else because you can't just be wearing what you're wearing. You got to wear something that they put you in. And they took me into makeup, and they said, wow, okay, now I'm in makeup, and Alan Tudyk comes in with PJ. And PJ says, yeah, he's doing this line. And Alan says, no, I've got somebody else in mind for that line. I thought, oh, great, I've lost my big part. I have one line, and I was obsessing about this line, right? And Alan says, no, I want him to be the MC. Well, okay. I realized there are no actually written lines for the MC. And he said, no, don't worry about it. We'll make something up. Okay. So now not only am I in the show, but I have to write my own dialogue. And next thing I knew, here I am. I'm on stage delivering lines in Con Man and introducing Alan Tudyk coming up on
did
stage.
they script that at all for you, or did they just tell you to, take it and wing it there?
Well, there was in the scene that they had me shoot, there was a guy who was on stage in a motion capture suit and who was being the most obnoxious motion capture actor ever in history of a convention appearance. And my job is to like hustle him off stage and then introduce Alan's character Ray Nearly. And so they said, well, he said, why don't you? And Alan says, why don't you say something like, the character who creates the characters. And I said, and I finished it for him. I said that you love to like. And all the extras in the audience thought that was a funny line. So he said, yeah, do that. That'll be fine.
Cool.
And so I delivered I got my lines in there, and I was an actor for a day. And embarrassed myself terribly.
Well, we got people out there asking about it, so apparently it was something that people were interested in.
Well, I tell you, it's in the afternoon. I managed during the middle of the shoot to fall off the stage, right into a stack of light cases.
Oh my
I
goodness!
made the most horrendous knocking over the garbage cans noise ever. And I was bleeding from the knee. I hurt everything on the way through this whole mess. And
Wow.
and these audience of extras all gasped. Laura said I just disappeared off the stage. And Alan said, Tracy?
Did anybody get that on film?
Oh, sadly, no. I was out of the shot. But I'll tell you what, it was so embarrassing. My one claim to fame is that I actually fell off the stage during the shoot.
That's funny.
But and the irony in all of this is that I got a letter from the Screen Actors Guild. Now I qualify for membership in the Screen Actors Guild because I actually had a line in Con Man.
Hey, I know people work long and hard to get an invite to the SAG group. And of course, that's all you got to do is know somebody.
I'll tell you, I think actually, though, in reflection, that of everything that was shot that day, my part is probably the most cuttable part from everything that was shot. So I'm not necessarily looking at this as my big break. Since I may easily hit that one. No, it comes out September 30th.
Comes out September 30th.
It comes out September 30th. It's on Vimeo. And you should go out and I think it's like a $14 rental, and certainly worth the trouble. You guys ought to go to Vimeo and look it up.
Well, we'll definitely have to check that out on our side. But now let's step back to the Bladed Avatar and Shroud. Great hearing about this other stuff here with you and Laura, of course. And I'm sure I can ask you a half dozen questions, and we can go on for hours just exploring the life and times of Tracy and Laura alone. Now,
it's a good life.
Now, when, of course, Shroud and the Avatar was picked up by the publishers,
yes,
they also wanted more content. Just trying to guess here. They wanted additional novels to follow. Now, of course, people wanting to know when will we see a final release? I know that even myself as a pledge reward, when we go to release, we're getting a copy of the book as one of those, a hard copy of the book. When can we plan to see Bladed Avatar in stores, in Amazon, brick and mortar type? When can we see it available for purchase, aside from what's digital out there now?
That's actually going to be partly up to the publisher, I do believe, and so we need to check with the publisher and see what their release schedule is going to be on that.
All right.
Um, I suspect that um, I mean I know that they've got it, they've got the book, and they've been working on it. So I'll tell you what I will do. I'll check with the publisher and see where we're at in the process and find out when that release date is set, because I'm pretty sure that
Everybody
they
would
know when
love
that
to
is.
know. And of
Okay.
course, two other questions we have here is who is your books?
Oh, Shroud of the Avatar is going to be published by Tor Books.
By Tor, okay. And you've worked with them before, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Laura and I are writing a series for Tor right now called Nightbirds. We just turned in the second. The first book was called Unwept, and the second book is Unhonored. We just turned that in, so that another year, and that should come out next fall.
Okay. And then, of course, another question was, who is your editor for the Shroud of the Avatar books? Do you have a specific person who is playing the role of editor?
Yes, we do. I believe it's Chris Morgan.
Chris
Christopher
Morgan.
Morgan.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I
of
hope
course,
so.
people are also asking,
If I've got that wrong, I am certainly going to hear about this shortly.
I'm sure, do we have any tentative titles for the follow-up novels? Or is that something that just hasn't even come up yet?
Well, actually, there's been some considerable discussion about the titles for the novels, um, and what the series title should be. I think Blade of the Avatar may actually uh, be more into a series title at this point rather than the title of the book. And there has been discussion about about doing the titles for 3 books as opposed to the one. We have some suggestions that have been coming, kind of been batting around on that one, but we haven't really settled on anything just
Are you
yet.
saying this like,
There will be a series title, and then
right, that's what I'm curious, like, we have Shroud of the Avatar, Forsaken Virtues, and that's episode 1. So is
mhm.
that like Blade of the Avatar will be the working title and there'll be a subtitle for each individual? Is that what
I
you're...
think that's the direction that they're going to go, something like
Gotcha,
that. Yeah,
gotcha. But
and we're
we
still
don't
talking
have
about
that,
titles. We don't really have that yet. No.
so it's not nailed down. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, of
It'll
course,
happen soon though, because they've got to print the book. They got to put something there.
well, we're getting closer and closer every day to game release as well. I know we're still several months away, so there is a little playtime there.
Hmm.
And of course, we also have been asked, um, does the Underworld novel have a working title as of yet, or is there a title for the...
We don't have a title for the Underworld novel yet, although we do have the basic plot. We're still working through some background issues with Underground to make sure that it all fits properly. But the plot for the Underground is spins out of the Shroud world, and is actually something I'm really very excited about. Um, it's going to be something of an exodus story, and of a group coming from the Shroud world and into the underground, fleeing into the underground, and I'm very excited about that, especially their
as they
discoveries
explore and make their way
of what
down?
the underground is. Yeah. A lot of it has to do with the foundations of underground, and we've been trying to talk to them about that as well. And we've brought some new ideas actually about underground to them that they've been incorporating into their background as well. And that's been pretty exciting to be able to contribute there as well.
Cool, cool. Now, do we know if the Underworld novel is going to go to or get to publication? Has that been discussed? Has it been picked up at all? Is there...
We haven't actually forwarded that or suggested that to a publisher. I suspect that um, uh, you know I no one really knows, of course, but I think that if the Shroud novels do well, that it would be a very easy sell to take Underground in as well. Um, the biggest problem, of course, is well, maybe not the biggest problem, but from my standpoint, a big problem is that everybody wants fantasy books in trilogies.
Now, why is that? I mean,
Well, we actually have to blame a publisher for that.
okay.
We have to blame the original publisher of The Lord of the Rings, because Tolkien's original manuscript was really one just really big fat book,
Right, right.
and it was never intended to be three separate novels. But the publisher said, "We can't publish this encyclopedia. We have to have it in smaller pieces." And so
More easily consumable.
more easily consumed and easier to hang on to, and so you don't injure yourself if you fall asleep in the middle of it.
Okay.
So the Tolkien cut it into three pieces, and in doing so, established the trilogy as the go-to structure for fantasy novels, and we've all been writing trilogies ever since. Margaret Weiss wrote a two-book series in Dragonlance, and ever since then, every time she goes someplace, people ask her, "When is that third book coming out?" Yeah.
Well, that always goes along the lines of always leave them wanting more, especially when that third book is just never forthcoming. And who knows? She may just.
Well, I certainly could see in Shroud of the Avatar, I could certainly see. I mean, we were writing three books essentially just for the background of Forsaken Virtues, but there is so much more story here, and so much more to be told, not just from Richard and I, but also from the fans as well. The fan fiction that's being developed as part of the community fiction that's being developed. All of that, I think, enriches the world, and who knows, may eventually see print.
Now, that was something we're going to touch on here also. Several of the developers have been written into Shroud of the Avatar, from what we understand. Of course, Richard is Lord British and Star is Dark Star. Do you have a character living somewhere in New Britannia? Now, we discussed this just a little in depth before we came live here. Do you have yourself written into the storyline as one of the players? And do you have a character who lives and resides in the real world of Shroud of the Avatar?
Well, I have kind of written myself in. I mean, I think in a sense, you meet this my spiritual alter ego when you first come into the game. The kind of strange
Edward?
lore. Yeah, Edward. That's pretty much, I think, my spiritual self
Okay.
in the game.
Okay.
But and yes, in the course of writing the script for the game, I've had an awful lot of fun with him and done some terrible things to him.
Yeah, what is it with you guys and having all that terrible fun stuff? I mean, Richard's got the thing
Oh,
with,
you know,
with the children,
every character has to have a flaw and a
and
problem.
you know, well, the fans love it. You know, you got to just go back and look at you know, over the period of time in your writing and Richard's games. There are just those, what I call them, those personal touches where when you're reading a Tracy Hickman book, you just, in the writing, in the storyline, somewhere, someplace, you read a line or you see a descriptive, you know, of what the character is seeing and going through, and you go, only Tracy can put it that way. And in the game world, you see little things and you go, that's a Richard Garriott attribute if I've ever seen one. Now, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know, do you work
But
towards getting that in there, or is that just happen? I mean,
that's just part of the craft.
you know,
I
I
think it
mean,
just
I would
happens.
attribute it to
I
just
mean,
the personal way you go about. Again, we talked about how you know, whether you're a plotter or an organic writer and how that all falls together. But I mean, I personally, as a fan and someone who's read many of your novels, um, like I said, there's just certain descriptives, and you go, "Wow," it's just another one of those wonderful touches he puts in there. And here in Shroud and Avatar, I mean, I'm doing certain things, and I go, "That's a Richard touch if I've ever seen one." It gives you those warm, fuzzy feelings, like you're home, like you're surrounded by friendly thoughts and feelings, and just all that good
It's that
stuff.
connection that
Yeah,
I mean, and it's interesting because, of course, those types of things are the kinds of things that Richard and I create way, way back before anyone ever has the opportunity to see them. And it's almost like we wait here secretly in delight for the time when for the time in the future, which is literally in the future for us, when people will come across those little moments and experience them for themselves and live them for themselves. There's a delight in sowing those seeds and waiting for the fruit to come.
it's the aha moment, as I like to put it.
Hmm.
Now, are there any of those aha moments that stand out in your mind where fans continually come back to you and go, "I love this. I grew up with this, and this, Blue World." Are there any ones standouts um, in your stories, whether they be of your own, in your collaborations with Margaret or Laura, um, that are highlights that stand out there that fans
Well,
keep coming back to you with?
my standout moments are not necessarily within the text; they're actually with the fans. I love meeting and I love meeting fans, and I love meeting readers, and I love reading the gamers because, and to a certain extent in games, and more so I think in the written word, the actual performance of what we create takes place in the mind of the player. It takes place in the mind of the reader. It's as though we write a script, and then somewhere, somehow, someone that we don't see on the other side of the screen or on the other side of the page takes what we've created or what we've written and presented and creates a performance out of it. They create a reality out of it and an experience out of it. And so when we meet the people, when we meet fans or we meet players and readers, we're really meeting the people who have performed our work in the stage of their mind.
Absolutely.
And each one performs it just a little differently. Um, Steinbeck said that uh, there are as many um, there are as many books as there are readers
Okay.
because every performance is different.
Now I can take and liken that to back. A lot of people who read your stuff. A lot of people don't know that you did a lot of the early D&D stuff,
Hmm.
and in which you created a layout, and of course the characters then continued their own storylines with the world that you provided for them to play and role play in these
Hmm.
worlds. Would that be similar to what we're talking about there? Where
Well, I think that that's true not just in terms of the role playing games, of course, that have been played, but I think it's also true in terms of computer games, especially these MMORPGs, where where we yes we wander around these virtual landscapes, but very much in the same sense that where there is no story, we create it. Just wandering around these visual landscapes and these virtual realities, our mind creates story, and our mind sets ourselves in story within this realm, and that act of creation is performance. So whether you're reading a book and performing the book in your mind, or whether you're playing a computer game and creating the experience from the visuals that are presented on the screen, I don't think there's that much difference. It's still performance, and so that's why my moments are usually with fans when I meet them and they get to tell me about their performance. You know, it's true. People will come up to me from time to time at conventions, and they'll say, "Oh, when I read this part," and they will start telling me about my book. Well, I wrote it, you know, but what I realize is they're not trying to tell me what words I wrote. What they're trying to tell me is what their performance meant to them
Gotcha.
and
Gotcha.
how they performed it. And that's a different thing. And when you realize that, then the experience of meeting the fans changes completely, and the relationship to the fan changes completely.
I guess that's just, yeah, it's a whole different level of interaction as you would with
Hmm.
the fan base there. Alrighty. Um, Now we were talking earlier about of course, the stuff you're writing here for Shroud is the past history, and we had mentioned how the characters and the players are now creating history as we go on. It's our understanding
Hmm.
that a lot of the storyline is going to be based around all these ancient ruins and what happened. Something else I want to touch on is the different races. A lot of people don't know, because most of them haven't read, that some of our races are not exactly what they believe them to be. These were conjured up by another race in order to be actual fighters in a war, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll delve into that in just a minute. What are the chances that later on down the line, because like you said, these 3 books are being written for Shroud of the Avatar Forsaken Virtues. We still have release 2, 3, 4, and 5, so of course that opens the door to hundreds of possibilities of other books, other episodes, and even bringing past history up to future history. What are the chances that we may see 10, 15 years down the line, God willing for all of us, that we start seeing some of this player history get encompassed as well as they add to Forsaken Virtues?
Well, I think when you have anything that is this massive in scope, that that the experience is informed by the players, and so I would think that especially over a protracted period of time like that the influence of the players on the direction of the world and story is going to be profound.
Indeed.
I don't know as it's going to change necessarily the ending of the direction, but it is certainly going to change the nuance of the experience. And I certainly do think that it will change story to a certain extent. It will influence the course of the river. Um, uh, I do think like as I've said, I do think good story requires structure, and we do have a direction that the totality of the Shroud world is moving toward. But um, but in terms of the journey and how we get there, and the nuances of how we get there, and the stories that are told to get there, I think that the player base is going to have an enormous influence on that as time goes by. I don't think that you can actually do a game like this and not expect that to happen.
Now, of course, we have books in game, and upon the release of that, the player base went wild. We have people publishing everything from flyers for their stores to news articles like we in a press in game. I'm the equivalent of the town crier here. I sit in one place, and I'm the guy with all the information. And people come and go, "Hey, Laz," and they come and photobomb me in my streams, which we luckily haven't had yet today. I'm surprised. Now, had you been sitting here along with my partner and I, I'm sure we would be mobbed over here in game. And I don't think we ever actually got an answer to that question. Now, do you play the game? Do you have a character in game, or is that something you prefer to keep? I mean, you could just say, yes, I have a character, but
No, I do have a character in game, and it's actually been and if you find me, please chat and talk with me. I'd be happy to do it.
all righty.
I uh, uh, for me, it's been an interesting experience to bring my character into the game, to walk into the stories that I've helped write, and to have engage in dialogue with characters that I've helped to create, in dialogue that I helped to write, and to see it all working, to be able to meet these characters and chat with them, and to see all of the functional elements working has been a real delight for me. Actually, so yes, you can find me in game. I do come in game as often as I can, and wander about. I have yet to buy a house. I'm
Okay.
still looking for a good neighborhood, but
Plenty of
hopefully
good
soon.
neighborhoods. I've got plenty of them.
Always important, and not too near the schools, not too far away.
Got
Yeah,
to be in a good school district. There you go.
yeah, that's right,
Is
exactly. Takes a little research before I buy.
I got plenty of room out in Snug Harbor. It's empty right now.
Excellent.
And
Land prices must be good. Okay.
well, of course, pre-alpha. A lot of our town folks who are building towns are coming in from other games, and we'll touch on that as well.
Hmm.
Ultima Online. Were you a fan of the original Ultima series? I know you and
I was a
Richard have
big
known
fan of
each other
the.
for a long time.
We've known each other for a very long time, and I did play a lot of I played a lot of his solo games. Um, and I have stolen my share of hamburgers through the drive-through uh, in in Ultima, but I have. And so, yeah, I've played them quite a bit. I did not get into the Ultima Online as much as I would have liked to have. It was coming at a really busy period in my life, and so I just didn't have the time to devote to it the way I'd hoped I could.
We all
So
know about that.
I mostly played through the solo games that had come predecessor to that.
Yeah. Now we have, of course, like I said, the players just coming in from the Ultima world, and they're developing all their towns and their cities. Right now is until we are ready to go. I just don't see building it all over and over and over again. That's just personal flavor of mine. Um, and of course, life keeps me busy doing things like this, interviews with
Yeah,
yourself
exactly.
and Richard and the guys, and gathering the information out there that a lot of people are asking. There's not a lot of information, and most of what is being done for Shroud is word of mouth.
Well, I think that you have to. I think all of us recognize that this is a massive undertaking,
Yes, it is.
and to be able to generate this kind of interactivity and content is a Herculean task, um, uh, which is nevertheless being accomplished. I mean that in and of itself is pretty amazing. Um, uh, to uh, and I think ultimately that's going to pay off for us in terms of community, especially now with the supportive community, even though we're still in beta. Um, when we open the doors, the world will be living and breathing, and in ways that I don't think anybody else has seen or really even yet appreciates.
Now, another thing here. You and Laura finished your own Kickstarter after joining the Shrouded Avatar team. As
Yes, we did.
part of the stretch goals for Sojourner Tales,
Hmm.
you unlocked the trilogy of modules set in New Britannia. Has there been any progress with these adventures,
Sadly, there
or is
hasn't
it,
been progress,
or is
but
it
I
an
do have a
ongoing?
really. It's an ongoing thing. I've got a really great design though for it. I'm looking forward to doing, especially from the standpoint of continuing of doing a three module set that continues one story into the other one. And the other thing that I very much like about Sojourner Tales um, is that we're not really restricted to page counts. I mean, we
There
can have
you
as
go.
many electronic pages of this as we want.
There you go.
I have to write the content for it, but and we've learned a great deal actually about creating Sojourner Tales stories since we first started. So I'm anxious actually to apply all of those to our Shroud series. I think if I've had a disappointment at all in any of this, it's that um, uh, we just completely misunderstood the shipping that was going to be required for it. And so a number of our backers, especially our overseas friends, have yet to get their game, which is sitting in my garage. And believe me, I would rather we're in their house than in my garage. But
Absolutely.
we're working through those issues as quickly as we can to get those to them. Me, I am looking to do this trilogy here over the winter holiday, and hopefully have that ready to go for everybody in the spring before actually we open the game.
Cool, cool.
Yeah. And if you do need a copy of the game, please come to the website. I'll be happy to send one
There
out to
you
you.
go. Now, another question we have is, are you a member of the Ultimate Dragons? And if so, what is your dragon name? The commentary behind this is, if not, feel free to join the group. We have amazing individuals, including Felicia Day, who is a Codex Dragon.
I've always wanted to be part of a secret group.
Well, it's not a real secret group.
Well, it's not much of a secret group, I'll have to admit. But yes, I would. I am not yet a member, and as soon as I can find my way in the door, I will certainly. I mean, with any group with an awesome name like that, seriously, I need to be a part of.
Well, I think after that, you'll probably have an invite forthcoming here sometime later on today from that individual who asked that question. I believe that was Browncoat Jason, who had many of
I know
yes,
Browncoat
who
Jason.
had
Yes.
many of today's questions. He submitted quite a bit here and gave us a lot to talk to you about today. So I just have to thank him as well. Yeah,
Good friend of mine. I like
another great
Browncoat.
member of our community. And again, I can't talk enough about the community. Um, Now, in the things you do, I mean, you've got your own community, your own following. I mean, um, what's the word I want to use? How do you do your most of your interaction with your community? Yeah, the folks here at Portalarium, they do a hangout once a month, and we do these telethons, and I get to get them out here on, video every once in a while. Aside from, of course, your books and the conventions, do you have a?
Well, I enjoy doing the conventions, although they can blow a big hole in schedule in trying to get stuff done. I've got so much work that really needs to be done, and right now that it's difficult to get out. A lot of my interaction right now is through Facebook. I do a lot of outreach through Facebook and try to answer questions as best I can there. I do have my own website, which is in some need of update and revision. It's been ignored lately, largely because I've had so much else that I've been working on. Not only Shroud of the Avatar, but as I mentioned, Laura and I just finished a book a couple of weeks ago. I'm finishing up a D&D adventure right now, actually, for a group of friends of ours who are actually patrons,
Very nice.
who wanted me to write a game for them, and they were happy to pay me for it, and I was happy to oblige.
So did they come to you
So
and ask you to write a module for them? Is that basically?
yeah, they did. They actually asked me to write a module for them. It's in fact, I've got it. I've got it right here. It's
I love this stuff.
this is it.
Love this stuff.
This is called Brimstone, and this module is actually written after the style of the original ones that Laura and I did hand built when we were younger. But Brimstone's one was actually one of the original 5 modules that we were going to do. We did one called Rahasia, that was our first one. We did one called Pharaoh. We were going to do a third one called Vampire, which turned into Ravenloft. And actually, that was the 4th one. The 3rd one we were going to do was called Eye of the Dragon, for which we'd actually printed covers. And we'd actually also done all the design work for Eye of the Dragon. and printed the covers for it, but I was hired by TSR before we could actually do it. And I guess it was last year, we discovered all of the design materials and the covers in a box. And these patrons said, what would it take for you to finish that adventure module? And I said, well, I just need to be paid for my time to do it. And they got a consortium together, and we actually finished that that module for them. I hand bound them the way we did originally, and used the same original covers that we printed 30 years ago.
Cool.
On the pieces. There were only 30 of them produced. So they're one of the rarest adventure modules out there.
Talk about your rare collectibles. There you go.
Yeah, that is a rare collectible. Brimstone was supposed to be the 5th module in the series, and we're writing it for our patrons now. And I love this one because the original idea is that your character has died, and you've essentially gone to hell. And if you make it through this adventure, the reward for making it through the adventure is you get your character back.
Ooh, that's deep.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. Based it very loosely on Dante's Inferno, and I'm actually really very excited about this particular module. It's turned out to be a great journey. It's the sort of journey that Richard likes to take. It's a journey into ethics.
Yes, and we know the ethical dilemmas that he likes to put people through in his games. There are quite a few really good ones in the game, and I don't think a lot of people get those just yet either, but they will. They'll get that aha moment as well. Now, is this this something that's going to be only available to these patrons? This module, is that something that you may get up to?
This particular module, actually, they wanted not only to, they do want patron-specific modules done. There'll be a limited edition of those, and again, I'll just hand bind those. But they actually want to produce a commercial version of it. They want to produce the module and make it commercially available for people.
Very nice.
So I'm pretty excited about that. I think it's going to be a great game.
There's no lack of work on your side of this coin over here. I mean, these people are keeping you busy from all angles, it seems like here, Tracy.
Well, of course, we've got the books for the 2 more books that we're going to be doing for Shroud of the Avatar, and we're doing a book for Underworld Ascendant, and I'm looking forward to doing that. I've got 1 more book in the Nightbird series with Laura that we'll be doing, and of course I've got the 3 Sojourner Tale games that we want to do as well, and I've got a 3-book series that I'm supposed to be doing with with Daw, that's called Knights of the Red Band, which I'll be working on as well. So I have a few irons here in the fire, and for that matter, I've been talking to the con man people, and we'll see if there's some fun thing they'd like me to do over there for them.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, boy, you've got quite a bit on the plate right now.
Yes, juggling quite a bit.
How do you juggle several different stories at once? I mean, do you ever get to the point where you're sitting in your day? I mean, let me just visualize this. I mean, a day in Tracy Hickman's life, you get up, you do the morning coffee, you sit down. I mean, you start to write a book, and you're working on one. And do you ever get, and you get an idea, and you got to jump to another project because one thing triggered an idea and something else you're writing at the same time? I mean, how does that work, juggling different writings simultaneously?
I find myself when I'm in the middle of something, I'm way in the middle of something, and especially if I'm writing, Laura will often come into my office and we'll have entire conversations, and and I will answer questions for her and have no idea that we've had this conversation or what I've said yes to.
You're deep in the world, and you've
I'm deep in the world,
invited
and
the
it's and
mother-in-law to come live with you for the rest of your life, and you don't even realize you
that
did it. No.
have no idea I've agreed to that. But but at the same time, if I do get an idea for something else, I just take a moment, make sure I've got it jotted in a place where I'll remember it, and then continue on. There's also, at least for me, I can only work for so long in a certain area um, before I get exhausted there. And so after I've written a chapter for a book, for example, and usually it's about a chapter a day for me. After I've written a
Okay.
chapter in a book, then uh, if I can, I'll pick up something else, and just for a break, you know. And it's hard to think that yeah, picking up another piece of work feel it doesn't necessarily feel like a break, but sometimes it can be. Just making that change can
Sort of
sometimes.
liberating from the task at hand at the time.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
something to
I
break
do
the
have a
monotony.
schedule that I try to maintain, and being me, it's usually a ridiculously unrealistic schedule. But I'm doing my best to try to modify that and come back to the real world.
Well, I don't know. Some would think that as a fantasy sci-fi author, that worlds you create allow you to just live life however you so wish. But of course, most people don't realize that there's a lot of commitment, a lot of dedication, a lot of real life. You raising kids, you've got a wife, you've got a mortgage payment. There's things to do aside from sitting down 18 hours a day and banging out books.
Well, it's true, and in fact, those are some of the more important things in life. You know, I've got five grandchildren right now,
Congratulations.
and it's important that I spend time with them. It's important that because I remember when I was you know 8 years old, 9 years old, and spending time at my grandparents' house, and it's those memories that bind us, I think, together. So while yeah, it is true right now, especially with the workload that we've got, it's 12-hour days, it's 14-hour days, but you have to stop and go do something else. You have to take that time for family, and
Absolutely.
because they're never going to be that age again, and I'd like them to remember me and remember me fondly in the times that we spent when we were younger.
Now, with that, just do you ever use family members as inspiration for characters? Um, do you ever think of writing the grandchildren in so that they have a little legacy in one of your worlds? Things like that.
I've included their names from time to time in books. I've always been careful, of course, to make sure that they were good people when I've included them. But yeah, I put them in from time to time in books and things that I'm creating just so that they can have that little moment.
Cool.
I know that when I did my Batman novel, my nephew found out I was doing a Batman novel, and he said, "Wow, that's really cool." He said, "You should dedicate it to me." And I said, "Okay." And so I did, and in fact, I think the dedication reads to Ryan because you asked. And
There you go.
but yeah,
Sometimes it's just
I
that
love to
simple.
do that kind of thing.
Sometimes it's
Yeah.
just that simple. Well, that's absolutely wonderful there, Tracy. Okay, do we have anything else that I didn't cover that you might like to let the fans know you're working on out there, up and coming, in the works? I mean, you've got so much in the works. We've covered so much territory in so little time here. And again, we could probably go for another couple hours, but of course, I'm sure you've got other obligations. I have other
Well, I have this.
obligations.
I got this module here. I got to finish
Absolutely.
writing here.
Brimstone.
Yeah, I got Brimstone. I've got to finish, and it's um, and of course I've got to get back with Richard. We've got to talk through the stories for the other two books as well, and occasionally drop into the Avatar world whenever I can.
Well,
I think that probably covers pretty much. Yeah, that's all I'm working on. Just those few things.
just those few things.
Yeah,
Most
just
writers would be
those.
banging their head against a wall trying to keep one book afloat, and you're juggling 7 different plates up here, spinning like the guy on stage with the plate spinners.
Yeah, that guy always made me nervous. I think.
I tell you, well, God bless you. Love the again. I'm a big longtime fan, so I'm looking forward to actually reading in full the book when it comes out. Like I said, I did read the first few chapters, and again, I see where the stories go, and I see that main character, and his attitude towards life. I mean, you already sucked me. Reading it on a tablet just ain't like having that physical book in my hands, if you know what I'm saying. There's still something for it in your
Absolutely.
hand that you'll just never.
Yeah. See, what I want that I want. It would be really nice if I had like that guy that you see in the movies who like irons the newspaper for the boss. I thought, well, man, that would be awesome to have a nice crisp newspaper like that instead of the rag sheets that we get here today. Now, there's something to be said for the written word.
Again, Tracy Hickman, everybody.
Absolutely, it's good to be here.
You can check his site out. It's trhickman.com, at trhickman on Twitter. Trust me, he does respond. I got this interview through 3 tweets. Again, thank you to Browncoat Jason for starting that little tweet. He tweeted out, he was looking forward to one interview. How about getting Tracy in? I says, great, let's ask Tracy. And Tracy replied again, who do I have to slay? We'll have to talk to these guys out at the Ultimate Dragons and find that answer out for you here later on. So
Good enough.
just hang on there a second, Tracy. I'll be right with you.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
All right, folks, this is Laz. We're signing out. We're live here with Tracy Hickman. You heard it here. All sorts of great stuff coming for the storyline in Shroud of the Avatar. I appreciate you all watching, and stay tuned for more news, information, entertainment, sports, and crazy wild happenings here in Shroud of the Avatar. This is Laz. Thanks for watching.